Welcome back to Around the Campfire with AmeriCamp podcast, the ultimate summer podcast, and it's Jen and Juliette, guys. We're back.
You missed us, we know. I know that Laura and Rob were really fun for a couple of weeks, but
the OGs,
the icons are back.
Today we're going to talk about special needs camps. I can't believe some of our applicants are going in the next 6 weeks.
It's so exciting.
It's just crazy. It came around so fast.
We spoke to people at the orientation this weekend that already have their visas, that are ready to go book their flights. It's incredible.
I know.
It's so fun.
I think also we're still placing people, so I think it'd be good to talk about kind of different camp types and kind of give people the 411 on special needs camps, because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about it, and I think it's quite a scary one that people are like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And so I think it's quite fun to talk about.
Yeah. And I think the people that are still trying to get placed at this point, they might receive an offer from a special needs camp at this stage in the season. They're running out of time a little bit, and they might just panic and think, oh, am I going to be good at this? I don't know anything about special needs. So this kind of gives them the opportunity to see that actually they could be really, really good at it.
Totally.
And hopefully get placed really, really soon at one of these types of camps.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think I'm a kind of prime example of that, because special needs is not something that I ever intended to do. Mm-hmm. It's not something that I ever had a catalogue of experience before doing. So I did camp when I was at uni. So my undergrad degree's in psychology. I know that yours is as well.
I did psychology as well.
Twins, love that. And then, so I did it when I was I just finished my second year in uni. So with my degree, we learned a lot about autism, and we did kind of different modules with childhood development and things like that. But I was by no means an expert in the field at all. I think the biggest thing with special needs is you just need to be really open and really patient with the kids. That's it. In my opinion, it's not really any, obviously that's my camp experience as special needs, so it's not as if I can really compare that to having done another camp after.
Well, I think you've obviously heard about all of our experiences, and that kind of gives you that comparison. But I went to a traditional camp. I didn't go to a special needs camp. We definitely had kids who had those additional needs though, and it wasn't something that I was expecting going in, especially last year being on leadership. It was a huge part of my job that I never really expected. Again, with kind of the base experience that you had of having done psychology at uni, but even if you would just an economics student or an English student and you'd never even worked in special needs, never even worked with kids, there is a learning curve, and I think anyone can do it if they're willing to, and can learn that patience and stuff.
Completely. So. I don't feel, having done that at uni, that necessarily prepared me any more than it would have. So I think it's definitely something that everyone should consider. I think it's something that on applications a lot of the time people are like, no, and after speaking to people, a lot of the kind of reasoning is that they don't feel qualified, and I think that that's a really good thing for us to talk about, because you don't need to be qualified. And I think that's one of the great things, because it's an opportunity and it's a skill in life that you can get, and you don't need
that's
to,
so unique,
and you don't need to prove yourself. You don't, jobs in general just now are, I want 5 years of experience doing this and X, Y, and Z. But at camp you can get that experience, especially if you're going into teaching or you're doing coaching or anything to do with kids.
It's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity right there to learn. And I also think a lot of people going into camp, especially if it's kind of even the first job that they've had or the first thing that they've done outside of uni, the first time they've been away from home, they already have a sense of imposter syndrome. I don't know how to work with kids, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that. I've never been to the US before, I've never been on a plane before. And adding the extra level of imposter syndrome that you might get from going to a special needs camp with no special needs experience, I think that's too much for some people. But genuinely, it just shouldn't be a barrier, because if you're not challenging yourself, if you're not a little bit nervous, then you're not pushing yourself, you're not getting the full experience that you should be getting out of this opportunity. And I think especially for people that are still in the place of not being placed right now, of looking for a spot, if you open yourself up and kind of consider, maybe if I let down this barrier of, I'm not going to be good at this, then you'd find something that you really enjoy. And that's kind of why we want to talk about it
such
today.
a valid point. I think the kind of thing that we should maybe start off with is that what is kind of expected of you at a special needs camp, and sort of, again, a bit of a misconception of like, is this going to be hugely different to a traditional camp, where I think that we can definitely chat and kind of compare.
Yeah, 100%.
So basically with me, so I went to a special needs camp in New Jersey, Camp J. It was amazing. I had the best time. And with any camp, you have 1 to 2 weeks of training. So regardless of what job you're doing, that kind of time period is set before the kids get there to kind of get familiarised with what you're going to be doing for the rest of the summer. So with special needs, obviously, I would say like it's a bit more specified with your training, just because you've got kind of different kids from different backgrounds with different like additional needs and things like that, and it's just more so for you to kind of be aware and how they like respond best, like communication wise and that kind of thing. So in my training period, I got qualified with American Red Cross for first aid certification. I think this is quite common, to be honest.
Yeah, I did that too.
Yeah, so I don't think that that's necessarily a special needs thing. But this is, you can help with like choking. We got trained on, if someone's having a seizure.
Yeah,
like all this kind of thing. So
we
again,
got the same stuff.
I would say the only kind of difference within our training is that we had like camper phytos. So we would have, our camp was quite small, so we had campers that would come back year on year.
Yeah.
And obviously we were all there for the first time, so we had kind of like alumni that had been there that knew all of the campers and kind of knew their backgrounds. So the kind of files were just a bit about, right, this person has autism, or this is this person's background, this person has spina bifida, whatever the kind of additional need was. And then it just had a bit about like their communication preferences. So I had campers that were non-verbal. We had a speech pathologist at our camp, so she was great.
So interesting.
Yeah, she was great, and she was able to kind of help guide us on, like this is like a good approach that you can use, because at the end of the day, like the kids just want to be like understood and like have fun, and you just need to sort of move forward with making sure that they have a great summer, and you just need to listen more and just 100%. Have like a little bit more patience. That's really all it is.
Yeah, and like at the end of the line, like the camps are there to provide children with special needs the same opportunity as children going to a traditional camp. Like everyone, I mean, if I was a kid, I would love to have had the opportunity to go to camp, but everyone should have the same opportunity to have these experiences. And they're really great for like developing, you know, social skills and everything. So I think just having it be like the same, essentially, you have all of those things, you have all of those files, you have all of this help to make sure that it feels like the same experience for them.
Yeah, totally. And we would have, the only difference is we would have campers that were one-on-ones. So this is just within our like day groups. So when we had our groups for activities, we would maybe have more counsellors for a certain group depending on how many one-on-ones were in that group. So if I had, usually if a camper was in a wheelchair, they would be a one-on-one, just because they require like assistance with mobility, and they just need a bit more undivided attention, and this is just so that they are able to have things adapted for them if needed. So really the only difference is that we had maybe more counsellors with certain groups depending on the additional needs. So in terms of what was expected of me, genuinely just like willingness to learn, patience, like acceptance, and just like it's hard work, but more like strenuous hard work. So I was like our camp was quite hilly, so if I was pushing wheelchairs, my legs looked sick by the end of the summer. Like I had
so if you want leg day to be
yeah, I had like runner's legs. So it's more like that I would say like that kind of in a nutshell was kind of the expectation.
But I think the things that you've listed there, like patience and willingness to learn, and just like what you said, are just like basic pillars of like being a really good counsellor. Do you know what I mean? So if you feel like that is you as a person, and you do want to, you already have a willingness to learn if you've signed up to go work at camp for the first time, you just harness that in a different way if you end up going to special needs. So,
I think I think the only difference because obviously I can only sort of speak on my camp specifically, there are different types of special needs camps, and there are, for example, different camps that maybe have like some special needs, like children that have additional needs. So my camp was kids and adults, which again is something that I think people are like a bit thrown by. Which I get, because I think like when camp and things like that is advertised, like you see all the videos of like the kids, and I think if you've got a picture built up in your head, anything outside of that picture kind of say like, absolutely.
And that's fine to have that picture in your head, because you don't actually know what you're going to be doing until you're there. And when I got hired at my camp, I literally knew nothing about it. It wasn't even on really like the list of ones that I had planned to speak to, and then I just had a really nice interview and I was like, okay. And I think that that's almost like, it's like when people go see a really good film and they say, oh, go see it without knowing anything about it, like go in blind. Obviously you want to feel prepared, but also it's okay to not know exactly what you're gonna find there, especially since you have that 2 weeks of training. That's your opportunity to learn and get stuck in and have that willingness to learn. In terms of my camp, we did have some children with additional needs, special needs, like autism especially, and it makes absolutely no difference to us, other than we just maybe spend a little bit more time, you know, making them comfortable at camp. It's a real learning curve to learn exactly what works for them.
100%.
And one day something's going to work and the next day it's probably not going to work, but that's okay as long as you've got like persistence and patience. And if you're there with the right intention to help them have a really great summer, then it's going to be really easy it's going to be difficult, but it's not going to be taxing to try new things and trial and error and that sort of stuff.
And I think you're so on the nose with that as well. It really is about them having fun. Like you as a counsellor are just there to make sure that they have the best time, and you have the best time making sure they have the best time.
Oh my gosh, yeah, 100%. I'm literally thinking about like certain campers now that I just love so much, and it just puts a smile on my face. I'm sure that you had like those really like strong connections.
100%.
I think it's almost even more rewarding when you get those breakthrough moments. Like we had one camper with autism who I was very, very close with, who was just like a legend on camp, such a lovely person, but was terrified of getting in the water, like so scared of swimming. And when we had that breakthrough, when they got in the water for the first time, it was like literally the best day of the summer, because we were all like almost in tears, so happy that it finally happened, even though we had got to levels of frustration that I wasn't expecting. It was just like totally pays off, and it was so magical.
I totally agree with you on that. I had specifically a camper that he had Down syndrome, and he just, at the start of camp, he just hated it. He would get dropped off by his mom for day camp, and he would wait at the bench like near the office and just sit until his mom came to get him. And I was just so like down on myself that I was like, oh, like how can I make him have fun? Like I don't want him to come to camp and be like, I cannot wait till I get to go home.
It's literally not even your fault though, because it's just a human thing to have like nerves and fears, and it's just elevated for them because of their needs.
Totally. And the thing was that we would have our activity schedule. He wouldn't want to do it, and you're never going to be able to force them to do it, and that's not something you ever should do. It's all about making sure that just any kids are just comfortable, and camp's fun. Like they're not there. It's not like school 2.0. It's like summer vacation. It's like meant for them to be able to like run around and be outside and be with their friends and like try things that are new. So with this particular camper, he was very like artsy, like loved arts and craft, was amazing at drawing. Throughout the summer, we kind of tried to kind of bring him to arts and crafts and various things, and he was just like not comfortable with that at all. So we started, I started kind of moving art mediums to the bench at the office to be like, right, well, if you want to sit here all day, that's fine, but like, let's have fun whilst we sit here all day. And then we kind of, again, like baby steps throughout the summer, but like towards the end, he would come in, be so excited to be there, and like we would just colour all day, but he was loving it. He was like so excited to be there. His mum was thrilled that he was like finally in a place where she didn't feel awful that she was leaving him, and he was so upset and like didn't want to be there. And it's just like finding their niche almost with particular campers. Like, not everyone's going to be comfortable doing like archery or going swimming, and you just need to respect their boundaries and just kind of figure out what works for them. But yeah, that was an amazing moment. I was just like, yes.
Yeah, no, I definitely, with this camper specifically, it was really good to tap into the things that they liked talking about. Silly little stories that they would tell, or they were really obsessed with the fact that there was a monster in the lake. Like we with the lake that our camp is on is called Quasset, and so
that's such a tongue twister.
It's nuts. They literally misspelt it on merchandise once because it's such a long word. But they were obsessed with the lore of the Quack Ness monster.
Love that.
So if you could distract them by saying, "Oh, what's the Quack Ness monster doing today?" then you could just, the rest of the day was going to be the best day ever, because you'd really tapped into something that they cared about. And that just comes from listening and being attentive and making mental notes of, okay, this camper, even with campers that don't have special needs, this camper really cares about this. If I want to get through to them, I'm going to put that in my, my locker in my mind and bring it out whenever I need to. And it always worked a charm, but then there would be moments where those things that you tried before and they had worked just wouldn't work.
100%.
And then you have to try something else. That camper had a brother on camp that was such a wonderful kid who was always really helpful in those situations. Sometimes the brother couldn't even get through to them, and it was just going to be one of those days where you have to accept, even though it really hurts like you inside sometimes, that it's not going to be a good day for them, and that's okay. People have their days, and all you can do is try and make them feel as comfortable and as safe, even if they're having like that moment of whatever panic.
Like, I would have campers who would come and they would just run around all day, and I would be like, great, and I'm also running around all day. But that was fine. Like, that's my job. Again, runner's legs. I was becoming an athlete over the summer. It was fine.
An Olympian.
Exactly. So yeah, there would be some days where it's like I would have a camper that would just want to go on the swing and then run away from me all day, and I was like, "Hey, this is a fun game that we can play." Bit stressful at times, but do you know what I mean? Like, it was.
But every day is different.
Exactly. So yeah, like the super rewarding. I'm obviously always gonna have a soft spot for it because it's like that's my camp experience, but I do think it's great for us to be able to kind of have a proper chat and really sort of get into it to explain to other people a bit more about what to expect with it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me, and I completely understand this being one of the kind of biggest things for other people, is like personal care. So not every special needs camp is going to require you to do personal care. My camp did, but that's something on my application I made clear that I was comfortable with. So it's something that was chatted through in my interview. Our camp director was very much like, this is a day in the life, this is within your role, these would be like your expectations and some of the duties that you would be doing. So I was like very aware, like, you're never really gonna be put in a situation when you get to camp and there's loads of things thrown at you that you never knew were something that you're going to be doing. You're always going to be super transparent with you with exactly what is required within your role. So personal care was something that I did. So as we had kids and adults at my camp, this required, so I had campers that were like immobile, so again also campers in like wheelchairs, and campers that just like needed additional assistance, so we would assist with like showering. Some campers needed like changing and that kind of thing as well. These would be kind of more one-to-one, so that was just something that again we would just, as part of the day, we would get up, we would we would shower, our campers would shower, or we would do it in the evening. And again, it's just like a little additional step of like assistance that I was absolutely more than fine with. But I do understand that might be like a little bit of an overstep for some people. But again, you don't know until you try.
I mean, everyone knows what their boundaries are and what they will feel comfortable with. But I also think that at camp you learn that you're actually able to do and are comfortable with way more than you thought, because you do just like get thrown in the deep end. And I think with that sort of thing, it's like you do just get really used to it and learn really quickly. And it's the same with anything at camp. You're going to get used to showering in the same building as a lot of other people. You're going to get used to changing in front of people. You're going to get used to eating strange food, which is all part of the experience. And I don't want to necessarily glamorize it, but also it's just, you get used to it so quickly, and because you're having so much fun, you just don't even notice it happening.
I think a lot of questions that I've got from it is it different from a quote unquote
traditional
normal camp?
Yeah, what even is normal? Like, yeah,
exactly, so true. All of the day. And it is. So from speaking to you, from obviously us working with like a lot of different camps and kind of being familiar with what they do and their activities and things like that, literally the only difference with my camp experience compared to anyone else's is that I had campers that had more one-on-ones, that I needed to maybe have a bit more patience. In terms of how our day is structured, like it's exactly the same. We would get up, we would have breakfast, do flag, we would do morning stretches, and then we would split off into our day activity groups, and we would have our schedule. So we would go to our activities, so we would have maybe 3 activity periods in the morning, and then we would have lunch, and then we would have like a little bit of a sort of cabin time break, and then we would have usually swim in the afternoon. So we would do either like swim in the morning and then lunch and then activity periods in the afternoon, or it would be vice versa. So yeah, and I assume exactly what you did.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily work out that way. You've got to be really adaptable.
Yeah.
Especially with those children that have additional needs. A lot of the time I would just spend the whole day just sitting with them, like you were talking about that camper that you just sat with and drew. I had the exact same experience where I would just sit on the beach with them and make conversation and whatever. Yeah. But yeah, it's exactly the same. You're still getting the same programming, the same experiences, the same traditions. And like you said, like there's no normal really every camp. This is what I learned from Laura and Rob's podcast, is that there are just like so many differences, so many little details, so many traditions. It's going to be the same for you.
Yeah. So you had, you said that you had campers at your camp that had slight sort of like additional needs, kind of mixed in with your kind of atypical children, I guess.
Everyone has these experiences and stuff at camp, and it's hard to describe why it's so brilliant, but I think that would be interesting for people that haven't considered it before.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, our camp was quite small, so we had 13 international counsellors, so compared to everyone, that's just like so minute. But obviously, because as I say, like there's campers that we have that are more of a one-on-one, like we are working a lot closer together. So in terms of, we obviously have that bond outside of work, but at the same time, like I think with other camps, like you're working a lot with like the kids and like bigger groups and things like that. But at my camp, I was working a lot with like my co-counselors. So I was not only able to get like really close bonds with like my campers, but a really close bonds with my like fellow counselors as well. So we were like brought a lot closer from, again, if we had a camper that's like, oh, I'm going to be running around all day, are you good to like hold the fort with these nature, kind of whatever the activity was.
Classic activity. Nature is the classic activity. Whenever I got nature on my schedule, I'd be like, okay, slay.
I think it's like, it's like a like nature therapy, like outdoor, just like very tranquil. So I think like a few of the biggest takeaways that I had was absolutely, I felt a lot closer with my campers because there was, again, our camp was smaller, so I felt like I very much knew a lot about each camper individually, and then their parents come up for like pick up and drop off, and then also day camp, so we would have parents like regularly there, so we are like developing really good relationships with them, and just seeing, as you say, those kind of breakthrough days, and those days that the campers come and they're like, oh my god, so I'm having the best time, like
100%.
Exactly. And we had campers that like weren't comfortable swimming like you, so we had counsellors that were kind of taking the lead on like, oh, you're sort of not comfortable with swimming, like why don't we like have a splashing contest, or like why don't we
be creative,
see who can make the biggest cannonball and splash the most amount of people in the pool. So it was just like all about, my job was basically creating fun, and that's the best
job ever.
Yeah, the best job, to say that's what I got to do for 3 months of the summer, which is amazing. We had another camper who was in a wheelchair and like couldn't walk, but could be in the pool, so we would have like a float, and then it's like obviously his legs could move like under the water, which was amazing, because
that's so cool.
Because obviously if he's in a kind of wheelchair all day and he's quite confined, like it's such a sort of freeing time to be able to do that, which was amazing. So I think I definitely learned a lot, and I just learned about just sort of stretching myself in terms of realising what matters, and like having that kind of patience,
100%.
and coming back after camp and like having much more perspective to be like, well, like these kids are like so ecstatic at the fact that they're like at arts and crafts drawing crayons all day, and like I'm going back to uni and people are moaning about
100%.
how they like, oh, they like can't go out the weekend, like, do you know what I mean? It's just like your priorities are just so like realigned, like after you come
gives
back
you a whole new perspective. I remember coming back from camp the first summer and just thinking, I have a totally new perspective on everything.
Absolutely.
Little concerns just didn't get to me as much. But I think it's really interesting you were saying about like stretching yourself and stuff. Even, I think I learned this more from working in a special needs. Well, I didn't work in a special needs school. I worked at a traditional school, but I was one-to-one with a girl who had Down syndrome. But I then went on to apply a lot of what I had learned from her in my third summer at camp. I feel like we talk a lot about patience with special needs camps and just camps in general, like being a really patient person. But I feel like it's more just being really good at not taking things personally.
Yeah.
I think the people who I've observed, who I really admire, who are really great like at childcare or are really good at working with children, are the people who have like the water off a duck's back, like just like don't take anything personally. They're very much just like, oh, okay, you don't want to do this. Well, it's your responsibility to help with that, but it's not your responsibility to like completely solve it and make sure that like they have the best day or you failed. Like that's not what patience is.
Yeah.
It's more just not taking things to heart necessarily. And then it makes those breakthrough moments even better because they just sort of like surprise you almost. You know what I mean?
And I think that's just for camp in general. Like I would have campers, obviously special needs, but then I had like really high functioning campers, and kids in general just say whatever they're thinking. So I would have campers that were like, hey, your head's huge. And I would just be like, okay. Like, so absolutely. Do you know what I mean? Like they would just be like, good morning, blah, blah, blah.
Morning, your head's huge.
This is the first like thought, do you know what I mean? Like this is the first thought I've like had today, or like 100%. They're just very like literal. And it is hilarious. Like like you just can't be in the mindset of like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna think about that all day, because it's like I almost appreciate just the upfrontness.
You gotta have a sense of humour like for that sort of thing. You're just like, oh, okay, cool.
I love that. Noted.
Yeah, I think in those instances where they're just saying no, and I refuse to do this, I will not do this, there's a lot of pushback, instead of just getting really frustrated and being like, well, you have to, you kind of just have to go, well, let's dive into why that is. And I feel like you just kind of treat them like a human being that you want to have a conversation with and learn more about. And,
what do you want to do instead?
Yeah.
I think, so in terms of special needs, I think one of my biggest takeaways is just how accepting it is. Like it's most accepting environment. You just feel really safe. You feel like you can just kind of unload anything onto anyone and they're gonna just take you for kind of who you are.
Yeah.
So if you're going through like a personal moment, if say something's happened at home, or you're like homesick, or kind of whatever struggles that you're having, everyone's just one big family, and everyone's just there to support each other. And
100%.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't help anyone if people are getting super burnt out and not being looked after. Like, you've got to look out for everyone so that it all works. And this kind of goes into something else, but I feel like at those types of special needs camps, and at my type of camp where we do accept children with additional needs, like, mental health is really prioritized.
Totally.
And we have a really good, like, we have like a full training on mental health. We like have a really good understanding of it, and that applies to campers and counselors. And when you're in an environment that you know like values that, and that you like know everyone's been trained in it, you feel really safe to like be honest. You get the most incredible support that you would never have like experienced before. And it's really nice when you're in that environment. It also really makes it easier to help those children that do have struggles with mental health. I've had children have like panic attacks and this sort of thing, and you just have so much support around you to make sure that you know what to do in that situation. Yeah,
absolutely. So I hope everyone's learned a little bit more about
I definitely have.
special needs, and kind of the fact that you don't need to experience. The only expectations of you that you work hard, you put yourself into it, you're patient, all the kind of key qualities that are human beings require to live life.
I feel like even if you don't necessarily think you have those qualities, maybe you're just comparing yourself to other people that you've seen that you think have those qualities, but you'd be surprised. Like, you will really shock yourself when you go to camp with how much you can do, because I genuinely, when I arrived at camp, thought I was going to leave after a week because I was so anxious and couldn't make friends and didn't know what I was doing, but have gone back as leadership. So
you've been back for like 3 years.
So I think just expect the unexpected. Be willing to like surprise yourself with what you can do, and this is like a really great opportunity to do that if you'd not really considered it before. Maybe this would be something that you end up feeling differently about yourself after the summer, which is really cool. So
thank you so much for listening, guys. We hope you've had fun with us. We've 100%. Had fun with you.
And keep sending us sort of the things that you'd like us to talk a little bit more about, especially as camp is coming up so soon in the coming weeks. So we'd love to hear what you want to know more about before you head out to camp, which is so exciting.
Thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.